So here in studio, we are blessed to have Jodie Emery, a huge advocate for marijuana and cannabis. It's really exciting to have you.
Hey, thank you for having me here.
Thanks for joining us. You've been involved in the fight, we'll use the term fight, a different war for drugs, I guess, in a way. You've paid all kinds of prices on a personal level, financially, socially. What makes you keep doing this as opposed to going, you know what, leave the fight to someone else, I'll just go live quietly somewhere?
Well, sometimes I do get tired and I think to myself, you know, I'm tired of hearing myself talk. You know, if the government wants to shut me up, just do the right thing and I'll go away. But they keep doing the wrong thing. And for me, I just get very upset every day knowing that peaceful, nonviolent people are being harmed, actually harmed by the government and the law, not for something that's just benign, but for something that actually saves lives and improves lives and can be the solution to issues like the opioid crisis and so much more. So for me, it's a human rights issue. I've always been involved from the magazine perspective. I was the editor, so we were always looking at articles about the government and the way they're treating people. And I was just shocked to see that peaceful, nonviolent people can be so brutally stigmatized, demonized, have their kids taken away, their home, their job. And it just makes me furious. I can't think of anything else in the world or anything else where a peaceful personal lifestyle choice, in Canada at least, where that sort of choice can lead to incredible punishment and suffering. So I get upset. You know, I don't care if I can't ever smoke pot again.
Right.
I don't care if I can't run cannabis stores. That was never my intention. It was something we only did recently. For me, it's always been about how the government is hurting peaceful, nonviolent people for a plant that saves lives. It's cut and dried, and it makes me mad every morning.
When did you decide you wanted to become a cannabis enthusiast and an advocate and stand up for?
Well, you were probably an enthusiast first, I imagine.
Yeah.
Actually, no. I was an anti-marijuana, anti-drug, teacher's pet, authoritarian who
Wow.
loved a man in uniform.
Okay, do we have a breaking news logo? Because that would be good right now.
The honest truth is,
Really?
I love police. I loved authority. I was a teacher's pet, a leadership student, and I gave my sister and all my friends such a hard time for being teenagers, basically. If they drank or did cannabis or anything else,
Right.
I'd call them stupid. I was always really bad, actually. I was kind of probably a jerk, a little bossy brat. But my best friend started smoking pot and reading Cannabis Culture magazine and watching pot TV and talking about this marijuana seed man named Marc Emery, who was running for office that year in BC. It was the BC election campaign in 2001. And that same year, 9/11 happened. And it seems unrelated, but for me, as a student, watching as we were being taught about what was going on, I was stunned to realize that my stoner friends knew all about where Afghanistan was, first of all. They knew all about the military-industrial complex. They knew politics. They knew world events. They were smart, basically. And I thought, how can these stoners be so well-informed about the world and history and all this? I just didn't understand, but it was because they were watching pot TV and reading Cannabis Culture. And so I started opening my mind. And then I tried beer one night, Pilsner, took shot glasses because it was so terrible. But I also tried cannabis by using a gravity bong in a hot box bathroom. So, you know, teenagers,
we're going retro.
hey?
Yeah, retro
Teenagers.
tonight. Yeah.
But it really changed my perspective, and it started making me question everything, which is really, I think, why governments and authority figures are so concerned, because after that point, I didn't believe any of the drug education, so I did dabble in other drugs, which wasn't wise, but I'd been lied to. And that's why the government's continued misinformation campaign is so dangerous, because when they keep lying, people are going to say, well, what else are you lying about? And they might not take good advice.
At the height of the battle, now it seems there's light at the end of the tunnel. It might not be the light everyone wants, but at least there's progress being made. Think back to not too long ago. Did you see this day coming? Did you see this? Or was this too much going, I hope I see it in my lifetime?
Well, to be honest, I don't think it's a good idea to make plans, because suddenly the U.S. government shows up at your Canadian doorstep and tries to take your husband away for life, and you go, wow, I didn't plan for that. So you can't really plan for anything. And I figure every day that goes by that we're out and about and able to walk and breathe and just be here, I'm grateful for, because you never know what's going to happen next. And so years ago, I remember, I was just asked recently actually by the Financial Post about how is the industry different now. You've got all the suits and the business side getting into it, then you've got the grassroots community. How has it changed? And I said, You know, back when I first showed up in Vancouver in 2004, just getting marijuana mentioned in the news was something we worked so hard for, and typically it was a bad story about dangerous grow-ops and gangsters and this and that. So just getting the truth about cannabis out there was such an uphill struggle, but it meant a lot to see the Liberal Party embrace legalization. But I have to remind people, Trudeau was opposed to it, even though the party membership voted for it, and he did support decrim before and doesn't now. So even though I'm excited to see the changes, I can't help but I'm frustrated because I feel like we're going backwards in a big way. And 2 years ago, I said I didn't have a job as an activist anymore. There was no more reefer madness. There was no more lies. Everybody knew it was going to be legal. The Liberals were coming in. It was great. And then they put a narc in charge of legalization, Fox in charge of the hen house. And this Bill Blair, police chief of Toronto, he's not in favor of cannabis. They want to restrict and limit it. And we know the police, as good as they are, and I have police in my family, they're enforcing a law that's harming people. And so when they put a cop in charge of legalization, you can kind of tell where it's going to go. So I am nervous about the future, to be honest.
Well, and let's talk, every province is going to be different, it seems. Kind of like the liquor laws are different in every province within a certain kind of framework. So Ontario, we've heard they're talking about the Liquor Control Board, they're running things. I can't imagine you think that. No one really thinks that's a good idea.
Right. No,
except probably the Liquor Control Board and the government,
Of course, the government. And in fact, there's an interesting story. So I was arrested in March, and I have personal charges, and I was hoping to maybe go to the Supreme Court of Canada and strike down prohibition and all that. I can't afford it, and quite frankly, we have a new law coming into effect. But I will be in the Supreme Court of Canada this December to defend the entire cannabis industry based on what you just mentioned about alcohol and borders and provincial governments and how they regulate. So right now, the cannabis industry is being really shrunk down into these sections of provincial governments where they get to control the distribution, but that is actually unconstitutional. So there's a gentleman who got busted taking beer over the border between Quebec and New Brunswick, and he's in the Supreme Court of Canada arguing that the government has no right to block the trade of goods in Canada, and in fact, that's what our Constitution says. So we applied to intervene as Cannabis Culture, representing a bunch of dispensaries who came on board, and also everyone else, the licensed producers, everyone, saying that we also are going to be impacted by these unconstitutional monopolies, so we want to say, and they accepted us, so we get to go and argue on behalf of the entire cannabis industry.
So then the country is your market, it becomes.
Exactly. BC Bud should be available to our Eastern Province fellow citizens. I mean, we should be able to trade this product all across this country. So we're battling the government on that angle, and many other angles, of course, too.
I have a question about your dispensary. So you guys, you own a whole bunch of dispensaries, and recently...
Actually, we never really did. So that's what we did last year, in early 2016. There was a lot of talk about how the licensed producers wanted to shut down dispensaries and how dispensaries were just pretending to be medical to get around the law. But they could all be shut down anyway, and they were in a massive sweep in May called Project Claudia. So we decided that we wanted to enter into the dispensary market, first of all, because Cannabis Culture had struggled through my husband's imprisonment and it had been very difficult. And we thought we need to survive as activists, so we need money. That's the lifeblood of any charity or movement. They need money to make a difference. So we needed to go into something that wasn't going to see us disappear. But we also wanted to do it in a bold way and say medical marijuana is essential. It's saving lives, and there are a lot of experts out there selling it and providing it to patients. We're not those people because we haven't been on the medical forefront. We're talking about all Canadians having the right to access cannabis. So we decided to go with a recreational model. And we announced that. It was pre-planned for the 27th of May, and I guess the day before Toronto police cracked down. And so it turned into a big scene. But we had this franchise model, and that's what that was based on. I wanted the idea of all the BC cannabis growers, or all the Canadian cannabis growers, to be able to have a way to serve the market, to get their product to market. And what better way than having entrepreneurs and innovators open up their own businesses, buy into a franchise that's recognized for fighting for legalization, and knowing that when you spend money at that Cannabis Culture store, just like with Marc Emery Seeds all those years through the magazine, you know that money's going back to activism. So it was an enormously successful initiative, and we had hundreds of people wanting to open up shops, and we were going to be quite something, but the police had other plans.
As you said, you can't make plans. You said you can't make plans.
And you can't embarrass the Toronto police chief at a massive press conference either. Even if you're speaking the truth, there will be repercussions.
Okay, I got to go back to something, because you said your friend starts smoking pot, you're watching pot TV, there's the Marc Emery guy with seeds. You've alluded to your husband, Marc Emery. How do you go from,
Yeah.
hey, you should watch this pot TV, look at this Marc Emery guy, to being Mrs. Marc Emery?
Wow,
Yeah.
that's a funny story. So with the election happening that year, it
Right.
was the first time I could actually go out and protest and go to a pot rally. And it wasn't actually Mark who showed up in town. It was Brian Taylor with the Nixon's old bus, actually. It was the BC Marijuana Party bus with the President
ironic,
Nixon's old
yeah.
bus. It is ironic. It was fun. But I went there and then I joined up at the Cannabis Culture forums. And this is online before social media. There were forums. So Marc Emery and Dana Larson and David Mamalevine, Chris Bennett, Michelle Rainey, and so many other high-profile advocates were engaging with people online there. So I joined up and started getting educated. Because again, I had been lied to, and suddenly I was like,
Right.
what's the truth out there?
Yeah.
And the internet was there to serve that curiosity. So I engaged with people that way and decided I need to move to Vancouver. I was born and raised in Kamloops, BC. So, you got to go to the big city eventually, right? So I moved down here and started working at a restaurant, but also went to Cannabis Culture headquarters, or the BC Marijuana Party headquarters at the time, and volunteering at rallies, and I'd write letters to the newspaper. And then in 2005, so about a year after I was here, I was kind of criticizing the magazine, saying, oh, this could be better, and maybe you should do this. And Mark fired the entire staff and said, you're the assistant editor now with me, so let's go do it. And
Wow.
I'm like,
Whoa,
oh my
that's
gosh,
amazing.
be careful what you, when you think you know what you're talking about. But I took over with the magazine with him, and we made it a beautiful publication for years. And he did get arrested later that year.
Right.
And we got married in 2006 and just got through all that prison and all of the ordeal, which seems like a hazy memory now when I think about it. But at the time, I think it was pretty awful.
I would think so. I remember seeing you on the news, throughout the whole ordeal, and it was hard to imagine that we were sending, Canada was sending someone to another country to serve time.
And a lot of people forget this too. I mean, and history goes on. I know. I don't want to be like the old granny activist. You kids, you don't know how good
when I
you
look
got
at
it.
you, like-
You know, like
You can smoke a joint anywhere. Yeah.
right? So I don't want to be that person, because I also have to remember when I look at all these newcomers and even law enforcement and government officials, and they're ignorant about cannabis. I can't blame them. I was ignorant too.
Yeah.
And when I first came to Vancouver, I was all legalize pot, but throw the druggies in jail for cocaine and everything else, because I was pro-cannabis, but I didn't understand the concept of prohibition as a policy being a failure. And then when I made that leap, it became more of an argument that was more acceptable to the public. You could have law enforcement and politicians and doctors saying, yeah, we should legalize cannabis by ending prohibition. I'm not in favor of it because I love pot. I'm in favor of protecting people from the harm of decriminalization. So that argument was much more effective, but it seems to have been lost. We're seeing a massive crackdown in criminalization continue.
I believe we have a live question here.
Again, studio audience today.
It's cool
First time
having.
ever on
I don't have
THC
to
Live.
read. I don't have to read the 4-page questions now.
Hello, good to see you.
Good to see you too. My question to you is, from one advocate, cannabis advocate, to another, moving forward with all these stiff penalties, if you could say anything to your fans and to people who look up to you, and maybe some people in our community as words of inspiration to keep going, what would you say and why?
Well, I'd say if you know that you're doing this for the right reasons, like a lot of people do, they'll continue no matter what. And I see that courage in a lot of parents and mothers who are finding cannabis oil works for their kids. And they know that there's a stigma and there's punishment and even risk of having their kids taken away, but they do it because it means that much to them. And quite honestly, I ask myself, like, how much am I willing to risk too? I get scared some days, and I worry that, they could come anytime and hurt us and arrest us and strip us naked against our will in cages underground with guns at their hips. That's what police do to people when they get arrested. So I get very discouraged and scared, but my inspiration comes from people who I know are depending on us, and they're the bedridden people who are sick, who send notes on Instagram or Facebook, and the people who walk into the dispensaries and say, you're saving my life, because they know that it's true. Nobody lies about someone saving their life, and meanwhile, anyone who's an activist or advocate, like I'm sure you know, it saves lives. And so that's the courage to keep going, and it's tough. I can't fault people if they get nervous and close their store or step back for a bit, because you have to sometimes self-preserve in order to survive and keep fighting. And so if, some people are going to have to take the bullets on the front lines so other people can make progress afterwards. But anyone who can take action in any way is valuable. Even just speaking to your doctor about medical marijuana is helping spread that education. And You know, at least we can go to bed at night knowing we're doing the right thing. We've never hurt anyone. We're being hurt by the government. And even if that means we suffer for it, I can go to bed at night. I don't know how they do.
Sleep peaceful. We have another question.
Hi, Jodie. I have great admiration for you putting yourself out there and you become a target. Can you talk a little bit about your arrest? Because I'm still confused about how they can do that legally and what are the charges and what
So
happened?
when we decided to do the Cannabis Culture franchise, my company had people who wanted to own stores just pay a 7%, we were working on 7% franchise fee to have our name and to have us come speak if they got arrested. And so we started building that out.
That's a weird
And
model, by the way.
It is,
That
yeah.
we'll be there when you get
When you're arrested.
Should you get
We'll show
arrested,
up.
we'll show up and talk
We'll
to
show
the
up and defend you, yeah.
Right, that's
It's
an
true, but-
interesting
and
business
I like
model.
it,
Yeah.
Because we had to make sure people knew that it was a risk and that
But
we
you
Right,
guys
of
are also
course.
backing
risk,
them
right?
too.
You
and
need to know what
stand
you're getting
behind
be
into.
them.
there. And
Yeah.
so when we started doing that, quite honestly, our company never bought any stores. They were all owned by others. I didn't own any stores. It was all the company that managed the franchise fees. But because we were associated with it, we were able to be indicted on conspiracy. Conspiracy is a law where if three people discuss say the three of us
Breaking the
said,
law,
let's break
yeah.
the law together, and we all agree, and we
group.
pass a joint. That was a conspiracy, and it's also technically organized crime once three people or more are together. So that's why the police, when they arrested us, they called us organized crime, because there are three of us, and we weren't foolish and disorganized. I guess we were quite
Right.
organized. But the arrest was quite shocking. I mean, I have to admit, I didn't see it coming. I was doing an interview just like this, actually, on Zoomer TV, and I went and saw a brand new Cannabis Culture store that was opening up that day, and then I went to get my bags with Marc to go to Spanibus in Spain. Got into an Uber, which used to be illegal, and somehow they got accepted. They broke the law. Got into this Uber, went to the airport, and got out, and immediately they put us under arrest. They said, "Are you Marc Emery?" And then Marc just turned to me and they're like, "Step back, miss." So I stepped back and like, "Are you Jodie? Gies Ramsey," that's my legal name. They handcuffed us. Marc, this is the most shocking part. Marc kept saying, "I want to call my lawyer. I want to call my lawyer." Because they're saying to us, "You have the right to call your lawyer."
Yeah.
Marc's like, "I want to call him right now." And they're like, "Oh, we're at the airport. It's too busy. There's nowhere to go." And he's like, "You have a cell phone. I want to call my lawyer." "Nah, we can't do it." It's because they were planning to arrest more people the next day.
And they didn't want a heads up.
And that night was tough, but I have to tell you, I wasn't actually ever scared at any point. I felt like, not that I knew it was coming, but I felt almost like, here we go. I can finally walk the talk I've been talking. I'm going to experience what I've been
Right.
fighting against. So here, I get to finally see inside the beast. And it was terrible. And the second night was the worst, though, because they strip searched you the first day. And I was like, okay, fine, I can handle that. Take off your top. And then they put your top on, take off your bottom. But it's degrading. The more I think about it afterwards, the PTSD side of it, I'm really, really upset about that because I was in their custody and I got refused out that day because they kept us overnight, and I went to maximum security prison where they strip you. I was like, "Oh, I'm experienced. Yeah, top first and then bottom." She's like, "All at once." No, all of it. And I thought, this is so wrong. And it just got worse and worse. I did an interview with Maclean's magazine that has some of the details, but I keep forgetting some of it, quite frankly.
Probably a good thing.
Yeah.
And I just can't
Rehashing
stand
the-
that people suffer that. So that's why I fight, because I need to make sure that never happens to another peaceful, nonviolent person ever.
Well, thank you
Jodie,
so
thank you so much
much.
for coming.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Jodie. Oh, you're a doll, too.
Thank you.